And we want to welcome the Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo, to the broadcast. Welcome, Mr. Director. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
You've thought a lot about terrorism in your career. Republican Senators Rob Portman, Cory Gardner, Marco Rubio, Fran Townsend, who was the terrorism advisor to George Bush, have all labeled this terrorism in Charlottesville. What's your view?
Well, let me begin by adding my personal condolences for the lives that were lost in Charlottesville. It's an absolute tragedy. With respect to the event, the car ramming, there's a civil rights investigation that began last evening or this morning by the Justice Department that will make a determination about whether it's appropriate to charge this as acts of terror. I have great confidence that they will investigate that with enormous rigor and get to the right outcome.
What's your personal view, though, of this? I mean, if terrorism is using violence to send a political message, do you think that's what this is?
Yeah, I think it's best for the CIA director to leave this to the Justice Department.
Let me ask you, when you were in Congress in October of 2016, 3 men were charged with trying to attack Muslims in your state. And this is what you said about bigotry at the time. We should deal with it quickly, harshly, and ensure it doesn't grow. That was very specific and tough. Should the president have been that specific yesterday? I
think he was just as specific. He said bigotry is unacceptable. Hatred is unacceptable in any form, whether that's the form that I was referring to that day in Kansas or the events that happened yesterday in Charlottesville. I think the president was, frankly, pretty unambiguous about what his Justice Department is going to do, the way he views how utterly inappropriate it is for this hatred and bigotry. I think the president's remarks were very clear.
The criticism is that he's been tough on the media, on all kinds of people quickly and without, much restraint. In this case, he said on all sides. People marching with Nazi flags, that's not really on all sides.
No, I agree. It's when someone marches with a Nazi flag, that is unacceptable. But I think that's what the president said yesterday. I think he was speaking very directly to the incident there, and we've all seen the videotape. And I think he was speaking directly to that and condemning the hatred and the bigotry that was on display yesterday.
All right, let's move to North Korea. What North Korean action would trigger a U.S. military response? Yeah,
I can't answer that. First, it won't be my decision. It'll be the president's, working closely with the intelligence that we provide him. But suffice it to say, I'm familiar with the facts. We're not at an imminent risk of that taking place today. An attack from North Korea is not something that is imminent. And the American people should know that this administration is doing everything with its power. The president has enabled the intelligence community and the Department of Defense to be sure that we're protecting America from this threat.
You said you didn't want to weigh in what would trigger, but the president seemed to this week, and I think that created some confusion. The president said North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen. That seems to be a president saying if they make a threat, the following thing will happen. They made a threat, nothing happened. Explain that to people. Wasn't that a red line he was drawing?
No, I don't think so at all. In fact, this administration has done a fine job of not drawing red lines that we're not prepared to enforce. I think what the president was doing there was very effective. He was communicating to many audiences, certainly the rogue leader in North Korea, communicating to him that the strategic patience of the past decades is no longer, we're just too close to him having this capacity to hold America at risk. I think secondly, he was communicating to the world, to China and to others who can influence the outcome there. We had a great success. We have the whole world voting to sanction North Korea, something that hasn't happened for an awfully long time. This is real progress as a direct result of what President Trump has done and the way that we have communicated the threat not only to America and to Japan and South Korea, but to the entire world from this rogue leader.
Is it U.S. policy that North Korea will not be allowed to have a weapon with a nuclear warhead that can reach the United States?
The president has made very clear. I'm with him.
Actually, he hasn't. That's right.
He has made it. John, he has made it very clear, John. He's made it very clear. The president, I'm with him almost every day, giving him his daily intelligence briefing. He has made very clear that the United States finds it unacceptable for a rogue leader like Kim Jong-un to have the capacity, a ballistic missile with a warhead that is integrated and fully deliverable to the United States and hold America and the world at risk. He finds that unacceptable. He is simply not going to permit it to happen.
The president was very critical of the Iraq War. He said it was the greatest blunder of in American history. It was based on intelligence. He's going to make a decision on the red line you just drew on intelligence. How's he going to know the intelligence is right in this case when he's been so critical about that previous instance when a president took action on intelligence?
Yes, sir. Policymakers are right to be critical when the intelligence community gets it wrong. And make no mistake, we've seen times in history when the intelligence community has simply gotten it wrong. Here's the good news. And this is not me. This all happened much before. I've been doing this only for a handful of months now. The intelligence community has done remarkable work in understanding Kim Jong-un, watching his ballistic missile program develop, watching his nuclear weapons program continue to exceed. The intelligence there is actually very good, and the president will be able to rely on the work that the CIA and the intelligence community provides him.
Two questions about intelligence. Let's talk first about the program itself. It seems to be moving faster than people thought. Is that right? And if so, shouldn't that make people nervous about the level of intelligence if it's moving faster than we previously thought?
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. That's actually not true. It's not moving faster than policymakers knew. As I said, you're going to have Director Panetta and I think Mr. Morrell, former acting director, on. It was their good work that has been tracking this all along. The intelligence community has actually had a pretty good picture. Can we predict days or weeks? No, certainly not. But we have certainly had a pretty good handle on the work that's been done to develop these system of systems.
What picture do you have about the North Korean leader and his predictability? In a sense, he is following a very familiar North Korean script. And if he follows the script, doesn't that suggest that he has a plan and he's not irrational and therefore wouldn't use weapons irrationally?
So I've described him as rational. One can debate that term. It's got lots of different meanings. He does respond to external stimulus. That is, we have seen that he listens to clear communications. He understands that his primary goal of staying in power, keeping the regime intact, requires a balancing act. And to the extent we can isolate him, we can get the Russians and the Chinese, and even the president had a phone call with President Macron earlier this week. This is a global problem. To the extent we can get the world to work on this, we'll provide good intelligence so that we can make the right decisions to get that regime to the right place, a denuclearized peninsula.
The U.S. contained the Russians and has contained, Pakistan has a nuclear weapon and has contained them. Why not contain North Korea?
This regime is different. Regime is different. I've heard some say, I think Susan Rice said, we just need to learn to live with this. President Trump finds that unacceptable. This is not a leader for whom containment is a policy that makes sense for American national security.
Let me ask you about that leader. You said, on the one hand, you said out in Aspen, the most important thing we can do is separate these two, meaning the North Korean nuclear program, from the leader. But Secretary of State Tillerson said, we do not seek regime change. Those two things seem to be in tension.
Not at all. Those are the same statement, uttered by two men who used simply different words. I was getting to the exact policy that Secretary Tillerson was. We cannot have Kim Jong-un in possession of the capacity to hold America at risk from an ICBM that is nuclear armed. That's the mission set the president has given his national security team. Add to that ballistic missile defense, and that is the mission that the president has demanded that his team deliver to him.
All right, Mr. Director, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for being with us.